This is Ruthie of Ruthie Ks and Anna of AK Artisans, and we're on So Much Talk, SEW, and we're talking about sewing, all different kinds of sewing. We've spent the first group of our podcast talking in particular about sewing for clothing. We've talked a little bit about bustles. We've talked a little bit about wedding gowns and wedding seasons and other seasons for sewing. And we've talked about talking to your tailor. We've talked about custom versus alterations and different pieces of custom. So we're just going to start talking about sewing in general and starting with what types of sewing people like. I, as you should know by now, if you've listened from the beginning, like sewing clothes. That is my favorite thing to do, is to sew clothes. Alterations, customizing them, custom clothing. Those are the things that I like. I am not picky about men's, women's, children's, but that's
Baby
me.
dolls.
Yeah, baby dolls. That's me. Um, but some people, we had a neighbor who all she did was make doll clothes. That's all she wanted to do.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yep, she made doll clothes. And my mom, who we made the RK Artisan store to sell her stuff. So please go on over there and look at it. She makes some amazing stuff, but they're not clothes. She makes aprons and table runners and cloth napkins. And on that site, we have other artisans too to help give you a little grouping of stuff who make earrings and what would you call those, Anna? Like the tree that goes on the wall and
Household decor. We've
household
got
decor.
we've got photography that comes on canvases or prints. We've got wall
Hangings,
sculptures.
sculptures. We have books there. Like my mom made us a cookbook, so we're putting that out there. Anna published for my mom the Advent that I grew up with. And Anna grew up with it partly because she lived right across the street from my parents. And she's put in how to do Advent, especially if you're non liturgical, because my parents were Baptist. And most Baptists back then did not do Advent, but my parents loved the looking at coming up onto when we celebrate Christ's birth. So they learned about Advent and made their own Advent. So she's got recipes in there. She's got the scripture readings that they used. She's got
She's
stories,
songs, whatever Christmas songs y'all sang.
songs. So we have books like that. Anna is also a writer. She's kind of hiding under her little bushel there, basket. But she has 6 books out, and we have those on there. If you like steampunk, that's awful cool. So this is our RK Artisans. She also is the editor. Is that the right word for our e-zine
That is correct.
of Ruthie Ks e-magazine? Sign up for it. It's awesome. And then you can see there, though, the different things that we can make. Yes, we have some Halloween costumes that are made by Ruthie Ks, and we sell them there because my store, Ruthie Ks Signatures, that's coming out, is selling more formal wear. We have potty kilts. A potty kilt is also a modesty kilt, and that's for children who are toddlers usually and like to go streaking around, and that's not always acceptable. So you throw this little Velcro kilt on them.
They're super adorable. They work great for swimsuit covers too. For your little
Yes.
ones.
Yes. We also have a young lady who makes dog not collars, scarves.
Bandanas.
Excuse me. So you need to go check that out. But many of these things on here are sewn, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody likes to do their own thing. We have our Three-Asaurus set. I'm a Three-Asaurus, which is a
The
t-shirt
Three-Asaurus is adorable.
and a little tutu. Those were originally made for my nieces, who are 5 now. Super cute. So these are just definitely things that you can make. And as far as my mom making aprons and all, she can make any style you want. And so she also does custom aprons. But the biggest thing with her aprons is almost all of them have hand towels on them or that come with them. And it's really cool to have your apron and you just can wipe your hands right there. You don't have to worry about
It's
finding that
super
hand
convenient.
towel. Yeah, super cool. And she does chef's aprons with pockets, chef aprons now. She's starting to work with putting hand towels on them. You can get extra hand towels to go with your aprons. We have them for all different seasons. They can come bibbed or half aprons as well. Then she has table runners. Most of her table runners are reversible.
Yes.
And so that's pretty cool. We also have a family member who does photography, and she does some pretty amazing photography. You've heard us talk about our emotional support chickens. You can buy your own emotional support chicken, $10 without a clucker, 25 with a clucker, and our clucker is Anna Fryer. So, which is pretty funny. Yeah, her last name, and she's our clucker. So, go check that out and look at the different things because if you're looking at learning to sew too, you need to try a bunch of different things and see what you like to make. Maybe you'll like to actually make dolls. I don't like to make dolls. I like to make clothes. So, but some people make porcelain dolls with soft bodies. Some people make the cute little soft dolls that all little tiny babies like, and they can have the um, yarn hair on them, like a Raggedy Ann or Andy. Uh, some people like to sew toys. Some people like to sew adventure books. That's what they
Mm.
used to be called. I'm not sure what they're called now. So those are all different things though that people like to do. Some people only like to do women's clothes. Some seamstresses will only do bridal and evening wear. Some seamstresses will only do men's clothes. Some seamstresses will only do children's clothes. Some seamstresses will only do traditional clothing. And traditional clothing means the clothing of whatever tradition they've learned to sew. We know some seamstresses that spend most of their time making islander clothing. Um, and they have different names depending on where they come from. There are seamstresses and tailors out there that only make Indian clothing. We've just become familiar with a shop in Federal Way
I think so.
or Renton who makes Indian men's clothing. Pretty cool. So if you have a tradition that you need clothing made for, there's somebody out there that can help you. And we're trying to also collect a group of seamstresses, names and numbers, so we can say, hey, go check them out. We're not necessarily recommending them if we don't know them, but we do have ones too that we do recommend because we do know them. We do know the quality of their sewing. So that's what we look at. Um, when we're recommending things because like I say, I like to sew clothing. If you wear it, I like to make it. So we're also looking for people, and if you know people, send us a note, send us a message. We're also looking for people who do cushions. We're also looking for people who do car seats reupholstering or furniture reupholstering because those are things I don't do. Everybody thinks, oh, they have fabric. That doesn't mean I'm going to do. um, People who like to do curtains. I don't do curtains either. So, yes, cushion covers. Those are all different things that people like to do, and you need to find the person that likes to do that. We are also looking for other people that like to do quilts because we get quite a few calls of people who want a quilt fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I might fix your quilt if it's not quilting, because I actually do not like to quilt. But I do know somebody who does that, and I'd like to know a few more people. And then we would like to have people that would want to sell their quilts or people could come and say, hey, could you make this quilt? Because I've had a couple people approach me about making quilts out of shirts, old shirts, t-shirts, a t-shirt quilt like for their kid who has all these sports t-shirts. So sewing is huge. You have costume sewing, you have clothing sewing, you have bridal sewing, you have suit sewing, you have sports sewing, you have athletic sewing. That's like, there are people out there. One of my best friends from high school owns a company that makes leotards for ballet and gymnastics. She's out of California. Um, you have people that specialize in skating, sewing, and roller skating and ice skating when you're competitive. There are people who like to make it's not horse sewing, but for the people that show horses, they have to get special jackets and
Oh, what
stuff.
are those called?
And
I mean, rider
equestrian,
kits, but equestrian maybe?
equestrian maybe. Um, I don't know any of those in the United States at this point, but I would love to hear about some. I have heard of some in India and Belgium, and there was a company out of the Ukraine that made them. That company is at this point no longer able to work there. Um, what other kinds of sewing do we have? I mean, we have so many types of sewing, and you should try out and see what you like. Some people only like to make stuff for dogs. Some people like to make horse blankets. Um,
Costuming is
so
an interesting one to segue into
costuming,
because you have costuming for theater,
mm-hmm,
which is actually a very specific type
very
of
specific.
sewing. It's different than what you'd make. It's the same principles at the end of the day, but it's very different than what you'd do for everyday clothes.
Sewing skills are all the same.
Mhm.
It's just how they're used, because I use the same sewing skills when I alter a garment as I do when I sew a garment. I just use them differently.
Exactly.
Um, Making a garment from scratch, I'm taking it and altering it from a scratch point from pattern. Where if you come in and you have a ready-made garment, we're altering in the round.
And what does that mean,
So
altering in the round?
you have a round garment and you have a round person to put in it.
Okay.
So you have to change, you can't change the peg, i.e., person, so you have to change the garment. Um, Costuming for theater has some pieces that are not necessarily going to be used outside of theater. Like if you're on stage and one example is in college, the theater did the play of Cinderella, and we had to make a pull apart dress.
Mm-hmm.
It had to last. So you weren't making a dress every time. And we ended up using a lot of Velcro and snaps on it. So that's something that you wouldn't have normally. If you're making something for the Renaissance Fair, you have a different style of outfit. There are people that just like to make coats. So think of coats though, but if I'm making you a coat to wear to work or an overcoat to wear to work, that's very different than me making you a coat to wear to the Renaissance Fair or a coat to wear to a steampunk cosplay. Making you a superhero outfit is different than making you usually a costume for Halloween.
Yeah.
Okay. Most Halloween costumes are not as well put together as something that you would want for a cosplay. A lot of times, one, for cosplay, you wear them over and over again. For Halloween, most people seem to only wear them one time. So they don't want to pay the money to have a Halloween costume made, unless it's like for my little nieces who were about three,
Yeah.
2 or 3, when we made them the pumpkin and the ghost costume, which is a t-shirt
They're
top with a
adorable.
bunch of net on it. And yeah, um, so
You know,
they're
that's a good point of other people we want to network with is we do a lot of the sewing for cosplay people because we have a lot of Comic-Con and convention folks in the Pacific Northwest. but it'd be great to network with other makers who can make the pieces that can't be sewn, like the cool belts or the gadgets or um,
People with
the
3D
crowns.
printers, yeah.
Yeah,
One of our customers right now is going as a second, I'd call it a second level Power Ranger, and he has a 3D mask coming of the dino that he's going to be, and I think he has the
the
sword
belts or the
coming
sword.
made
Yeah,
3D, and he was working at where to get a belt buckle. Um, so yeah, lots of different things. It's also for cosplay, like we just did cuffs and a collar
collar.
for one, and that's really all we did. And he just attached it to a T-shirt. So sometimes it's just pieces of something, and that's totally okay. When I'm doing formal wear, which is what I mainly do at this time of year because I have prom and I have weddings. Um, when I'm working with guys, I'm often taking buttons off of a shirt and adding an extra buttonhole so that they're a quasi, the word just escaped me, but it makes them usable for cufflinks,
French cuffs.
French cuffs. So there are those kind of things that I do all the time right now. We're shortening jackets and shortening sleeves and shortening pants hems. We're making sure that the seats are the right size, the waists are the right size. And the closer you get to all of those, the less alterations you have, the less alterations you actually need, the better you're going to like your fit. The more we have to revamp something, the harder it is to get the fit correct because you have a round hole that you're trying to fit around a round peg. And the more you have to change that shape of the hole you're trying to fit the peg in, the less happy most people can end up because you're already working with a cutout piece of fabric.
Hmm.
So those are just some of the pieces. And I keep coming back to clothes because I just love clothes. Costuming um, for a film is different also than costuming for theater. Colors can be different. Sizing and texture all plays different with a camera versus with your eye in an actual theater, with the distance you sit from the theater. Those are all pieces that come into costuming for the theater, which is a totally fun venue. Um, when I do custom, I'm working with an individual and I'm coming up with what they want. That's my whole goal when I do custom for you is I sit you down and I try to find out exactly what you want. I will ask you 1,000 questions and I expect you to answer me very pickily. I need you to give me as much detail as possible about how you like the fit, what you're looking for, what you think it's going to look like. Because sometimes, if you don't do this, we're looking at the same picture and I'm taking it apart piece by piece to put it into a pattern in my head. And you're looking at it saying, oh, it looks like that. And I see this pair of pants and I see them as wider. And you see them as fitting slim around the hips when really in the picture, technically they're not. So you want them to fit slimmer around the hips. I need to know that. So, these are the pieces. But when you're doing that for costuming, we have a director in here who knows what they want. And my goal is to make that. I mean, it sounds really cool if I were the costumer, right? But as a customer, I don't get to make the decisions on all the clothes. I get to help make those decisions. I get to help guide those decisions. But I'm trying to make the clothing match the director's picture of the movie. That's kind of cool. But it is a whole venue all on its own. Like creating uh cosplay, putting that in Renaissance and all that. Those are also very specific because those are trying to meet somebody's idea of what that character looks like. It's cosplay, Renaissance. So they're kind of in between custom clothing in general and theater clothing. They're kind of in between. So that's just a quick high overview. And anybody that wants to give us some feedback, we would love it. What would you like to hear about? What are some of your questions that we can answer? We love to hear those. So this is Ruthie of Ruthie Ks and Anna of RK Artisans. Go check out the RK Artisan store at rkartisans.artisans.com and see what we have there. It's a lot of fun. And you can check out ruthieKsInc.com also and see some of the stuff I have that are on the more formal area, vests, ties, that kind of thing. So this is Ruthie and Anna. So much talk. Have a great day.